What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Praise Podcast. My name is Eric Lade. Of course, I am joined by the Brooke Paninsky, and we are excited to be here today for what will be episode number 5 of the Praise Podcast. And the Praise Podcast is brought to you by the Central Podcast Network. If you have not checked out the other podcasts in this network, let me tell you, you are missing out. We've got Leading Young, which our young adult pastor Hayden Paninsky does. That's a great one, especially if you are a college-age student or a young adult, which we kind of define by the ages of 18 to 35. Specifically, that podcast is one that you want to check out. Then we've got the Encounter podcast with Maria and Hope. If you are a lady and not listening to that podcast, then I don't know, Brooke, you can tell him, but I actually have not listened to all of it because, you know, I'm not a woman, but it's got to be good stuff.
It is good stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So be sure to check out the Encounter podcast, especially if you are a lady. They have got some really cool conversations happening there. And then, of course, we've got Soma Talks, which Lucas Crawford is doing. And that one really is specifically built around for men. So if you are a guy looking for content that is kind of geared towards men and conversations around the Bible and just spiritual things that are geared towards men, then that would be a podcast that you certainly want to check out. And then, of course, if you're listening to this, you found the Praise Podcast, which we are super thankful that you are listening to this. What would be even better is if you shared this podcast via your social media or with a friend or a family member, or if you would just hit that like button or that follow button. That also helps this podcast get seen. And then even the best way is to leave a rating and review, because again, that gets this podcast seen, preferably the nice and positive ratings and reviews. But you know, you do you, whatever you got to do. But if you could do those things, that helps just get this message out even more. But we're thankful to have you all listening to the Praise Podcast. So today we're going to talk. Well, it's me and Brooke, so there's really no telling what we're going to talk about. We have a general idea, I think, but if you're listening to this, you have made it to 2022. It is a brand new year, and when I think of a new year, I think of a lot of things. I like to make goals. I like to, vision cast and dream about the upcoming year. Brooke, what is your favorite part about a new year?
My favorite part about a new year, I mean, I think just like many people would say, it's a sense of a clean slate or a fresh start or the newness that's coming for something. I mean, just to be able to start in January 1, be like, okay, what does this year have in store for me? God, what do you have for me this year? And so usually what I've done the last few years is there's been just like almost like a prayer, like a specific prayer that I have that the Lord will put on my heart about something. And last year it was just praying for boldness in my choices and the things that God was leading me to, and just to be a person that was bold enough to be obedient. And so like this year, it's
boy, did you have to swallow those prayers, didn't you?
Man, I sure did. So
are you going into this year a little more careful with what you're praying about?
You know what? After how glorious last year was, no. I mean, this year I'm praying. I put on my Instagram, I'm going to read it. I said, 2022 will be a year that God's faithfulness and miracles are more evident than we've ever seen. 2022 is a year that I'm praying for more. More of you, God, in all things, in every way, more. Use me, use us, have your way in Jesus' name. So my 2022 my 2021 brought me for 2022 of like, okay, I just want more of this. So whatever this is, God, like, no, he didn't scare me away. Yeah, he just like filled me up even more. So we're rocking and rolling.
Well, and this is a shameless plug, but you said the word more. Mm-hmm. And speaking of the word more, Kept has a women's conference, KEP conference. Yes. The first ever is going to be happening. Was it March 5th, right? Mm-hmm. March 5th.
Registration, though, because we do have to have registration for this event, and it closes February 5th. So there's going to be a lot of personalized things, and just we need to know for planning purposes how many people to expect. But registration closes February the 5th. So if you're listening to this before then, register. If not, catch us live online.
Yeah, it's going to be a super cool time. I know you've had a lot to do with the planning of that. Of course, Maria Lacrone is doing a lot of planning with that. Yeah. And so if you are a lady out there, that's going to be a day that you want to be a part of. How do they register? They go to our website?
Yeah. So if you go to centralnow.com/kept, it will bring you to Kept's ministry page on our website. And then right at the top, there's a link to the registration form. It's $15 for everybody who comes. And
super cheap.
It's super cheap. And there's also an option to buy a T-shirt, a Kept Conference T-shirt within that form. And we're not going to have them posted any other time other than when they register.
Exclusive.
So, I mean, if you see a lady walking around in a Kept Conference shirt that's purple tie-dye, I mean, she didn't waste any time.
Keepsake.
That's right.
Well, cool. Well, there's a unplanned shameless plug for
that's true. It was very unplanned.
Kept Conference, but be sure to register for that.
Yeah,
But I love I love the freshness of a new year. I do love to make goals. And it's always fun, actually, in the notebook I have sitting in front of me, there's at least probably a couple years worth of goals that I'll randomly flip through and find. And it's just cool to see, plenty of them are unaccomplished, but the ones that you do accomplish it's always neat to see that. So I like to do that. Shout out to all those. One of my 2022 goals was to read the Bible in a year. And I have obviously read many parts of the Bible, but I've never done the whole let's read the Bible in a year thing. Right. And so I started that. So shout out to the Genesis crew right now who is hanging out. And we've all probably made it through Genesis a bunch. But so I've enjoyed Brooke has been the recipient of as I've been reading through, every time you read through the Bible, different things pop out at you. Yeah. And for whatever reason, this time reading through Genesis, I don't know if it's because I'm a parent now or what it is, but like the sassiness and just honestly the overall like fed upness of God, like with like the early people that he created has been honestly hilarious. Yes. I have found so much just comedy in that. So
I made the joke. I was like, Eric, you're more Christ-like than you thought. I mean, God's just had enough of these people.
Yeah, I mean, multiple times God's just like, I can't, like, I literally can't with you people. Yeah. And I'm like, wow. Me and God, we are. We're more relatable than I even thought. So, it's been fun. But with that, we were actually talking the other day, and that's kind of the goal of this podcast for us. If this is your first time tuning in, honestly, randomly out of nowhere, Brooke and I will just dive into conversations, and then we think like that would actually probably like somebody else would have enjoyed taking part in that conversation. And so we were just talking the other day about 2022 and. If you're a member of our church, Central Christian Church, obviously, basically about 6 months ago, we went through a leadership change, and Jamie, our pastor, retired, and John Henniger is our new lead pastor, and Brooke and I stepped into new roles, and so there's just been a lot of transition and change going on, and we were talking about 2022 and just how, one, excited we were for that, but then just to see all the... just the positive things, really. Like, there are just so many good things happening at our church. And we don't say that as in like a bragging way, but like God is just doing some really cool things and blessing a lot of different ministries. And we've gotten to hear so many cool testimonies of just the way God is working in our community and in our church and through our church. And as we were talking about that, it kind of led us to not like a but it led us to kind of like what does that mean for like the Satan side of things? And so we were just talking about how there's so many good things and so many big plans and so many positive things that we see coming. But that also means that we have to be even more careful and faithful and obedient in the coming. And so, Brooke, you kind of mentioned something that kind of stirred, or it was a statement that I think is a good one to start of, but having an awareness of the enemy. When we say the enemy, we mean Satan. But what is that? I mean, what is having an awareness of Satan? What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, I have two initial thoughts. One, there is just this part of me, like when it comes to encouraging people, that I feel like I always go back to. But if people are in like a slump or they are discontent or they're going through a lot of trials and tribulations and seasons that are unpleasant and not fun, and it can be very easy for people, even Christians, to put the blame on all these bad things on God. Why me? God, why is this happening? God, why are you doing this? Why, all the things. And I always think or I want to be the person that encourages, know where to point the finger. Bad things, evil, darkness can't come from God. He is a God of wrath, sure, but it's a holy wrath. It's a justifiable wrath. And this is not, dealing with consequence of sin. We're not talking about wrath. You know what I mean? We're talking about, we live in what I always think of the enemy's territory. This is a sinful earth. We're sinful people. We have to deal with the consequences of sin. And because God is good, we have the ability through him to, find light and find hope and find things that are enjoyable and encouraging because of his goodness. But I think being aware of the enemy is truly understanding what comes from God and what is a consequence of sin and what comes from the devil and who is really capable of what here, And so I think being aware of the enemy is just having the eyes to see his tactics and what just that what, how do I say it? Just what is in a situation or in a scenario, recognizing this is not from God, this is an attack of the enemy. And so I'm not going to put my blame on God. I'm not going to start to doubt and question. I'm going to lean in on God more and be how am I going to get through this? Or help me, whatever. And so I think there's some clarification sometimes that we need on like I said earlier, just who do we point the finger at for what's going on around us, or in a situation.
Yeah. I think that's been a topic of conversation, not only within our team, but really our staff as general has been really in this coming year. Yes, God has done a lot of great things, and we're super thankful. And we want to point the finger and the praise and the honor towards Him. But we feel like this upcoming year, for us as a staff and a church, it is going to be even more important for all of us to be pressing in even deeper than we can imagine or fathom into the Word or into prayer or into your worship, into our families, because it's going to be inevitable that attacks are going to come, right? I mean, there's a huge target on our back. And I was thinking, as we were talking about this, John 10:10 came to mind and is just always a reminder for me. John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." And so, I mean, Satan's sole purpose is to take our hopes, our dreams, our goals, our visions, our day-to-day life, and to steal, kill, and destroy. On the flip side of that, though, Jesus has come so that we can have life and have it to the fullest. That seems really simple, but for whatever reason, we get so distracted by the stealing, the killing, and the destroying. And when we know that Jesus wants us to have life to the fullest, we often get caught up in the other side of that.
Right. And I mean, don't get me wrong, God, I mean, it's biblical. It's, he disciplines his children. Sometimes, our discipline doesn't feel good and we can be like, oh, that's the, what I mean? And it is a tricky thing to walk. And I'm not saying that, I want to be clear on that. I'm not saying that, if it's not rainbows and butterflies and didn't come from God, that's not what I mean.
Right.
But, I think truly just having the eyes to see what's the enemy and what is not, I think, and praying for the discernment and the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to, just that, see and discern, what's going on around you. And again, letting that change how you pray.
Yeah. And so I think that leads to a conversation that we talked a little bit about, stewarding things well. And it has taken me, and I'm far from fully understanding this, but it has taken me a long time. And I feel like I'm just now starting to really grasp an understanding of this idea of these are things from God. These are, whether they're gifts, blessings, whatever you want to refer to them as. This is from God. So how do I steward it well? Like what are my personal things that I need to do to, whether that's a talent you may have or whether that's a gift or a blessing you feel like, like maybe just your family, maybe parenting your kids. But how do I steward what God has given me well? And for me, I think the most glaring part of that for me is prayer life. And how do I take that further and deeper? Because I can read the Bible. I like to read the Bible. That's not a huge issue for me, but prayer is something that I don't know if I think I probably at some point have to have some undiagnosed ADHD, but like sitting in silence and that part of it, it's very hard for me. That is something, and not that I need to pray for hours on end, but when I think about stewarding the things around me and the things I'm in charge of and the things that I need to do, prayer life is something that I pinpoint and go, that's something I need to take deeper. How do I take that deeper? So I don't know. What are your thoughts on stewardship of that sort of thing, and maybe even prayer and going deeper into prayer?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think prayer is something that a lot of Christians can easily say, like throw out and say, I'm praying for you, but are we really? And I had a friend in high school, and he said it to me, and I just in conversation, and it's always stuck. And he has said, like, what if people actually prayed for the people they said they were praying for? And so, I mean, I think it is easy for us to get used to that language of I'm praying for you, love you, best wishes, whatever. But like, do you really actually pray for things? And I'm in a season right now where just about maybe this past year, I've truly seen and experienced, like for the first time, like what it really means to be interceding for things and really actually specifically praying for things, and with the faith of like, God, you're going to do it. And I'm going to see it. And if it's your will, there's just a boldness to now my prayer life that I never had before. And I've seen testimony of God working and moving on my behalf or for what I'm praying for, whatever. And it's just built my confidence in him because he's walking me through how to pray for something and how to believe for it. And also how to handle it if that's not, if what I'm praying for doesn't work out how I expect it to, you know what I mean? Like, and then and walking through that process with God of like, there is a little boy who, a year ago we were praying for his healing and he passed away. And so then processing with God, like, okay, he received his healing eternally, in Jesus' name. And it might not have been what we wanted. It certainly wasn't what his parents were asking for. Friends of his teachers and his classmates, all these things, that's not what anybody here wanted. But to still know, God, you're still good. And he received his healing eternally, and being not mad at God, but accepting like your will over my will, your will over our will. And just kind of, you talking about ADHD, I'm very, in my mind, very squirrel-like. Like I have ping pong. It's like I have like, it's I don't know if it's not ping pong. It's what's the other thing that it's like the arcade game that's like
pinball.
I feel like my brain is pinball most times. And in this moment, that's how I feel, because the one other thing I want to say about that, or the thought that it triggers for me, is when I had a friend during a season again and it's a different child now, but there's a different child who passed away very young. And a friend who was really dealing with that grief, and they said, like, what's the point of that? Like, why pray for healing and it doesn't happen? Like, what's I don't understand, whatever, all the questions that we can have when we grieve and all the things. And I remember I'm careful to say like, God showed me this or whatever, but it was just my eyes were almost open to a different way of it. But I'm like, if our whole goal here is to bring people to the Lord, and if our whole goal here is to just want to be in heaven with Jesus more than anything else, then like that, the passing of this little boy, he brought how many people into a church building for his funeral that day? How many people? I mean, there were like 400 people at his funeral. I mean, and how many people heard the gospel for the first time? How many people through that boy's passing, you know, were able to experience the presence of God in that room? How many people, you know, asked questions for the first time? And how many people did that little boy bring to heaven with him one day because of his short little life? And so God can turn bad things to good, and God can, you know, still show up, and his ways are higher than ways we can even comprehend. But not that had anything to do with what you were asking. And again, ping pong. Wait, no, not. What is it? Pinball.
I feel like people listening are not. There's no question that you both have pinball brains.
Okay, yeah, we really do. It's great. But we have people who listen, so we must not have scared too many people away. But anyways, so I don't even know what the original question was at this point.
No, but I think you bring up something with that. I think there's and this is what I'm learning as I am pushing myself.
Oh, you were talking
more,
about stewardship.
Yeah. Well, as I am pushing myself more in prayer.
Yeah.
I think for me, and you use the word, this word as well, but praying with expectation.
Oh yeah.
Is something that I am. I don't want to say like. I mean, I guess maybe like you said, like. I'm seeing it. I know what to look for now, or like I'm learning how to recognize the answers to that. But you know, I just think back to our Christmas services, and you know, very specifically, and multiple times leading up to that, I know myself and others, and whether it was as a team, whatever. I mean, we specifically prayed, God, use we want to baptize people from these services, like. That's not something we typically do at Christmas. Like and it wasn't just, we want to do it to say we did it, but it was like, God, we are expecting to baptize people from these services. And I mean, we prayed multiple times about that, and we prayed intently about that and specifically about that. And I mean, I don't even remember the total number, but I mean, it was like 10 or so baptisms that came from our Christmas services. I mean, we were dunking people in between cleaning up confetti. We're doing baptisms, which is mind-boggling. And I remember after the first night after it happened, I remember thinking like, this is not normal. Like this is a big deal. Like at 5:00. We got in a big circle, and we specifically said, God, we expect you to move, and we expect this to happen. And at 7:15, we were dunking our first person.
Yeah.
And it was just like, to me, that was a realization of how long have I like limited what God can do because my prayers have not been bold enough, big enough, and I haven't expected enough from God.
Wow.
And so I think that was really an eye-opening moment for me. And not that every prayer, you know, it's not that you can just say, God, I expect you to do this, and it's going to happen. But I think when it was a realization to me when we actually, like, our goals actually align with God's goals, and we say, God, this is like, we're with you, we expect this, then it's like, I mean, just hang on.
Yeah.
Because it's coming. And so I think for 2022, that's something that it's like, for me, is, you know, how am I willing to go along for the ride and pray bold prayers of expectation, or am I going to continue to limit God for what I think I can handle, or am I willing to, like we talked about, go deeper, press in deeper, and watch it happen.
And I think, you know, dare I go there and talking about this, but, you know, when we talk about, you know, seeing more spiritual things go on and happen, and we're in the position where we say, okay, God, how do we do this? You know, how do we go deeper and it be healthy and it be right and it be pleasing to you and you alone? And, navigating new territory, I mean, it requires, what does the Bible say about this? God, what have you modeled for me about this? And not putting him in a box. Like you said, how much time did I waste, or how long did I go with just thinking God could do X, Y, and Z in my prayers? But like, man, there's so much more there. You talking about that, like, that's how I feel about all things with the Lord, and once you start to see it, like, and you go deeper, 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 like shallow just doesn't cut it anymore. Like when you really experience like up close in your face miracles, and you hear testimonies from people that and that you love, and it just changes the realness of who God is and what he's in the business of doing, and what he wants to do here and at our church, and what he is doing here at our church. And I think something cool that you meant, or talking about Christmas services, I remember it was Monday our first night of services.
Yeah.
Was it Monday?
Yep.
Monday, it was the 8:00 service. It was not as packed as anyone was anticipating. And I remember in my mind thinking, like, oh man, darn, does COVID keep people out? Like what, and I'm just praying about it, whatever. And I had to, because I had the privilege of opening up Christmas services every time. But before I stepped out to start worship, I remember like feeling convicted that was my heart condition. And I was like, God, if this is only for one person, then it was worth it. And I don't know how many people were there, but I mean, there was a lot of empty spaces and all the things. And I remember that it was so discouraging. And then I was like, but no, like, it's not ever about the numbers. Like, God, if we opened up these doors, if we plan for months at a time, if we sacrifice sleep and time with our family and all these things to make this happen in your name and for your honor and your glory, then if just one person in this room right now is hearing about you for the first time, or wants to be baptized, or all the things, whatever, comes to know the Lord, then all of that is worth it. And then he just in a moment shifted my mind, like my mindset, and shifted my heart condition. And we praise God, but we got to baptize someone, if not multiple people at a time, after every single service but one.
Yeah.
And we had 2, 4, 6, 8 services. Is that right? We had 8 services. And I mean, it was just amazing. But like, yeah, I think that was a huge, like, what do they say? Like bow, what do they say? Put a bow on it, of 2021 for us. And it was just like the perfect way to end a year of transition, and like the perfect encouragement we needed to start a new year also in transition. So,
and something we've talked about, and that kind of what you just talked about reflects that. All of this starts in private.
Yes.
Like it all starts with how deep you're willing to go when it's just you and God and nobody else. And so, I think for us, that's something we've talked a lot about is, obviously our responsibility is to lead other people in worship.
Yeah.
And we are both fully aware that if we aren't first doing that in private and modeling those things and actions and postures and words in private, then honestly, they're meaningless when it comes time to do it in public.
Yeah.
And so I think, for a lot of, and honestly, I think this probably in reality was one of the things why it took me so long to see, is because it took me so long to get that part. That, of course I prayed, I read my Bible, but, over the past years, my private time, my private life with God, my private relationship with God has gone deeper. And that deepness, I think now allows me to pour out things in public that I couldn't do before because it wasn't there in private.
Yes, it's the overflow. Yeah. I mean, truly, and I know he just keeps bringing the importance of that up to a lot of people, and even John, which I'll talk about in a second. But our prayer life, our personal prayer life, what we can call our secret place, we'll say.
Yeah.
Like what we do there, like, and what we hear from God there, and what we learn and what we read and how we pray, like what we do in our secret place with God, it just becomes the overflow of then what we pour out on a platform. And that is the heart condition that we want people to have, whether they're on praise team or on a band or in the congregation or in what, it doesn't matter. But like, it's just your ministry, like when you go to town, your ministry with your family, your ministry when you're at work, your ministry, whatever, like when you are then around people, the overflow of what you hear from God and what you experience from him in your secret place, that's just it. It pours out on the people around you. And that's ministry. And it's powerful. And something that John said at our staff chapel last week or 2 weeks ago, but one of the things he said that I thought was kind of funny and very true, but funny for me is he said, like, I don't even remember, don't tell him I said this. Sorry, John, if you're listening. I don't remember what made him start talking about it, but he was like listing all these things or whatever. And one of the things he said, and if you remember, you can say it. But he said, don't be the person who does X, Y, and Z in front of people or around people, but you're not willing or you don't do it when you're alone with God. And I laughed at myself because I was like, I don't know if the people are ready for me to do like what my alone time with the Lord looks like, when I'm by myself, like here in front of everybody. I'm like, they'll be thinking I'm crazy, but like it's so true. And I think that's so important for so many people. And I think, if we don't get that right, I think it's a good opportunity. That's like an open door from the enemy too, to come in and create a lot of, strife and pride and issues and questions and confusion and doubt and hypocrisy, spirit of religion, all these things that like we don't have time to mess around with right now. There's too much work that needs to be done. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, there have been times where, and it seemed like I had these conversations more when I was, leading high schoolers or, especially young people. They say like, I don't really, I don't understand, or, in worship, everybody else seems, to feel this or, they're hearing this or they do this and I don't really understand. And, especially now, but as I go, a question to you is, if you don't really get the worship thing or the prayer thing or anything like that, or it hasn't clicked, I guess my question to you would be is like, what does your worship look like in private? Because if it's non-existent, then it's no surprise that your worship in public is non-existent. Because if it doesn't start there, then what do you have to pour out to other people or for other people? And so I think that is, something that, we talk a lot about with our team and our people is, the time that we are on the stage leading is only 30 minutes of a 24-hour day or however many hours are in a week. Like, it is an extremely short time, but the time that we are not on a stage leading far outweighs that. So how are we modeling this idea of bringing the praise? Does that look like a daily minute down to the second thing for you? If it's only these 30 minutes that you're actually on stage leading, then we're missing it. We're missing the point. And I don't think God will bless that. And so, and I think that, like you just said, then that just leaves an open door for Satan to come in and kill, steal, and destroy. So.
That's a good word, Pastor.
It's something. It's something. Well, any other thoughts with this?
This is not where I thought this podcast was going, to be honest.
It never is.
It never is. So I I have a lot of thoughts, but I don't think now any of them really apply to what we're talking about. But I think it's great. I think that we can dig in more just about the power of prayer and a prayer life and what that looks like and tools and all the things next episode or something. But for now, I think this is a good start. I think I think if you're a listener, I hope it challenges you to sit with the Lord and see what that's like for you. And for whatever reason, like I just think the best part we've talked about is the importance of a secret place and a private prayer life with God. Yeah. And so maybe if that's what this whole episode was about, then let it be about that, and let it challenge you who's listening. What does your private time with God look like? Is it journaling? Is it reading? Is it a Bible study? I feel like even if you're someone that's like, I have a Bible, but I don't really know where to start, I don't understand it or whatever, start with the devotional. Let a devotional kind of tie you into using the word and it making sense and it applying. And I mean, there are all sorts of pastors you can talk to and friends I'm sure that you can plug into or whatever, but like just get in the word of God and really try to test, like try it out. Try out a prayer life, try out praying for bold things and try out asking God for wisdom and for the discernment and for the eyes to see what he's doing. But like, I challenge you for 2022, I challenge you in your private prayer life with the Lord. If that's all what this episode we could have said to our people or that they could hear, I think that is a great place to start 2022 is in our in our private areas and times with God and all the things and just that secret place. And I think it's so important. And I mean, that's what's going to equip us for what's coming next, for whether it be to handle and steward the blessings well, or to handle and intercede when the attacks come. I mean, our prayer life is truly the root and the biggest weapon that we have for that.
Yeah. I think the challenge is if you have been consistent in lifting your hands in public, but inconsistent in lifting your hands in private, then that seems like that's the challenge. How do you reverse that? Yeah. How do you change that? Know that your central staff, for those of you that go, I mean, that's we're pressing in deeper, we're pushing deeper, we are preparing for big things, and so I mean, our prayer, one of our prayers is that you join us in that, and that you are willing to press in and go deeper personally, so that we as a church can do it as a body for our community and for others. So appreciate you listen again. Central Podcast Network. If you haven't checked out those other podcasts, be sure to do that. Again, we would love for you to hit the follow button or hit the like button on this and leave a rating and review as well. And please share this with somebody else. If you have a friend or a family member that you think would benefit from these conversations, please give them a share of this. And we are looking forward to more episodes. We get a full year of podcasts that are coming your way. If you haven't figured out the schedule by now, pretty much every other Monday we are releasing a episode. So every 2 weeks you should have a fresh episode. If you hit that follow button, it's automatically going to pop up in your library of podcasts. So you don't have to search for it. You don't have to wonder, is there a new episode? So just hit that follow button, and then every time we drop a new episode, it'll be right there for you. You don't have to look for it. And the best part, it's all free, Brooke.
Yeah,
you don't have to pay for a thing. It's all free. So we appreciate you all listening. For the wonderful Brooke Paninsky, my name is Eric Lyday, and always remember, every day and in every way, let's bring the praise.